In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you the 3 most important pillars to managing your PCOS naturally. Now, you may be on birth control, or you may have gone to a doctor and got some other kind of medication. But the reality is that PCOS has no cure, which means that if we have PCOS, unfortunately, we have PCOS for life. And we need to find a way to manage it as naturally as we can for life. Otherwise, we're going to be on medications for a really long time. So I'm absolutely all for managing PCOS in as natural a way as possible. And the other huge thing is that the research shows that diets and lifestyle changes are the most effective and the most important thing that you can do to manage your PCOS. So that's exactly what we're going to be talking about in this video. Now, I really want to encourage you to give me your undivided attention for the next 45 minutes or so. The things that I'm going to teach you are really going to hopefully change the way that you think about your PCOS, the way that you manage your PCOS, and I really think can make a huge difference for you and your PCOS as you move forward. So I really want to encourage you, give me your attention, let's focus, and let's talk a lot about PCOS. Now, these things that I'm going to show you in this video are the things that I teach to all of my customers, to all the women who sign up for my course. This is really the fundamental stuff that really you need to understand if you have PCOS and if you want to live your life to the fullest capacity you can in spite of your PCOS, which is absolutely something that I feel so incredibly strongly about. Now, when I was first diagnosed with PCOS, probably about 12 years ago, going on 13 years ago, there was really very little information out there on PCOS, and my doctor unfortunately wasn't particularly helpful. And I was very much left to my own devices. She just said, yes, Taryn, you have PCOS. You can either go on the birth control pill, or if you want to start a family, we can refer you to a fertility specialist. And that is pretty much the sum total of what I got offered. I was trying to conceive at the time, so I did take her up on the offer of a fertility specialist. But I just really felt so... felt really isolated. I felt really depressed. I felt really hopeless. And I really felt like I was at the mercy of this massive system. And that there's very little that I could do for myself, which is what led me to doing many hours of research into PCOS and really what I could do to help myself. So what are the things that I could do? And, from supplements to eating well to the kind of exercise that I should do, these really became the things that I did for myself that helped me improve my own PCOS, my own symptoms. And that then led me to teaching and everything that I know about PCOS. So that's kind of led me on this journey to becoming a nutrition coach, and I specialize in women with PCOS because I feel really passionate about it. I only ever tell you the things that that I would do for myself because I know what it's like to have PCOS, and I'm not offering, you're never going to hear me talking about a miracle cure for PCOS simply because there isn't one. So this is not a get rich quick kind of scheme or a heal your PCOS overnight kind of scheme. You're not going to hear me talking about it. It's not real. And I just want to be really truthful with you because I know all about PCOS. I know all about the highs and often very, very many lows of living with PCOS. So that's just to give you some context of the things that you're going to hear. Everything that I'm going to teach you about in this video has some scientific basis. Okay, it's not just sucked out of my thumb. It's not just anecdotal evidence. It's from my experience of the last 8 years of working with women with PCOS, in teaching about it on my blog, and in applying it to my own life. Okay, so I'm not, if I talk to you about it, it's because I've tried it myself. So I know what it's like to implement the things that we're going to be talking about. So with all of that groundwork laid, in terms of what we're going to hear, let's talk about the very first thing that is so important when you're managing your PCOS naturally. And that is that it's important for you to understand that the things that you eat have a massive impact on your PCOS and your symptoms. And I've spoken about this in a previous video about how diet and lifestyle have been shown to be the most effective way of managing your PCOS. And if you have a look at the NICE, which is the National Institute of Clinical Excellence in the UK, if you have a look at their guidelines, they will say very clearly that dietary and lifestyle changes should be the first line of treatment before we consider other medications, before we consider metformin or spironolactone or birth control pill, we really need to look at our dietary and lifestyle changes. Now, unfortunately, there are very few doctors who speak about dietary and lifestyle changes, and it is changing. There are more and more people talking about it, but it is still not very commonly spoken about, the dietary and lifestyle changes. Now, I need you to understand why dietary and lifestyle changes are so important. I need you to see what is happening in your body when it comes to PCOS. So I want you to bear with me. We are going to get a little bit technical, but it's important to understand. Now, researchers are not really sure what causes PCOS, whether it's genetic, so perhaps our mother had PCOS, our grandmother had PCOS, and it was undiagnosed because nobody really knew what it was when our mothers and grandmothers were younger. There seems to be some kind of environmental components. So women with PCOS tend to have higher levels of BPA or environmental toxins in our bloodstream than women without PCOS. It could be dietary and lifestyle factors. So the fact that we're eating really processed foods could impact it. Basically, they're not sure where it comes from. But there was a piece of research that has shown that there is this fundamental change in the pancreas of women with PCOS. So in your pancreas, you have beta cells, and the beta cells, those are the cells that detect glucose in the bloodstream. And the beta cells are the cells that cause the pancreas to release insulin. So I want to show you this little diagram, and I'm going to walk you through it. Okay, this is how insulin works. Now, this is for people without PCOS. This is how we would expect insulin to work. So let's say you go to the office and you walk into the office and somebody's having a birthday, and there are donuts and cupcakes and cakes, and you help yourself to a cupcake. Excuse me. And what happens is that the beta cells of the body, they pick up first that there is glucose in the bloodstream, and they signal to the pancreas. They say, hey, there is glucose in the bloodstream. We need to start releasing some insulin. So the pancreas releases insulin, and that insulin then it's almost like a hotel porter. I want you to think of insulin as a hotel porter, and it takes the glucose by the hand, and it takes them to the muscles of the body. Now, the insulin receptors are found in the muscle cells, okay, in the cell wall of the muscles. So it knocks on the muscle cell and says, I've got some glucose for you. The muscle cell opens up and allows that glucose in. But it's this lock and key mechanism with insulin that causes the muscle to open up. So that is what we would expect in people without PCOS. But what happens in women with PCOS? Well, the same scenario happens, okay? So we have a cupcake. Instead of this normal response from our beta cells tend to be a little bit more dramatic, okay? And they really, really raise the alarm bells. They're like, whoa, there's a load of glucose in the bloodstream. We have to do something about it. And so instead of raising like a level 1 alert, they raise like a level 5 alert. And our pancreas pumps out insulin, okay? Then what happens is that not only is all this insulin being released into the bloodstream, what happens in all women is that all women produce testosterone from their ovaries. That is a very normal response. But what happens in PCOS is that our ovaries are oversensitive to this insulin, and it causes too much testosterone to be released from the ovaries. Now, if you have PCOS, I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of the symptoms of PCOS, things like an irregular menstrual cycle, hirsutism, hair where you don't want it, possibly hair loss and alopecia, so you get this male pattern baldness, acne. A lot of those symptoms are being caused by these really high testosterone or androgen levels. And that is in response to insulin in our bloodstream, okay? But we still get this happening where the insulin is still ferrying the glucose and being the hotel porter and taking the glucose to the muscles of the body. But because there is so much insulin, it's almost like the muscles they have selective hearing, the muscle cells, okay? So they don't respond to just the one hotel porter. Now we need more and more insulin to encourage the muscle cells to open up and accept that glucose in. And so we are prone to insulin resistance, okay? And that is something very, very common in a lot of women with PCOS. But then what happens if the muscles of the body are full? Okay, they're like, there's no more room in the inn. I cannot take any more glucose. I'm not interested in having any more glucose in the muscle cell. Well then, insulin's job is to take that glucose and to transform it into fat. And it's also responsible for fat storage, okay? So what I want you to see from this is that the food that you eat, the cupcake that you eat, the food that you eat determines how much insulin is being released from the pancreas. How much insulin is being released from the pancreas has this knock-on effect onto the testosterone being produced from the ovaries. So what I want you to see is that the food that you eat has an impact on your PCOS symptoms, and that you can change your metabolic profile, you can change your hormonal profile simply by changing the way that you eat. Now, for me, this is so powerful. It is so, I just found it so empowering, because there is something that I can do for my own body and for my own PCOS to improve my symptoms. Now, it's not going to be overnight. You will see some improvements, but it is going to take a little bit of a journey. Now, I've spoken about this again, I've spoken about this in other videos, but what I want you to see is that if we are saying that the food that we can eat, that the food that we eat impacts on our testosterone, impacts on our PCOS, the next step in the next logical question is, what should we be eating? What should we be eating to manage those insulin levels, which will then help us manage our testosterone levels, which will then help us manage our PCOS? And I am so glad that you asked that question. Now, when I think about a PCOS diet, there are three main pillars that I think of. Okay, the first thing that we need to talk about is dairy. Now, dairy has something in it called insulin growth factor 1. Now, all forms of dairy, whether it's human breast milk, cow's milk, goat's milk, sheep's milk, lion milk, whatever milk is produced by a mammal, is going to have insulin growth factor 1. And there is a very good reason for this. Insulin growth factor 1, its job is to promote growth in newborn babies. So if you think about a baby when they are born, how much they weigh, and then how much they weigh when they turn 1, there is a huge difference in their weight. And a lot of that is down to the insulin growth factor 1. But there is a problem with IGF-1. The problem is that it tends to mimic insulin in our bodies, okay? So, and in addition to that, women with PCOS have been shown to have fewer kind of receptors for IGF-1, which means that this IGF-1 is kind of left to float around our bloodstream. But remember, we've said that if you have high levels of insulin, you're going to have higher levels of testosterone. So there is this link between IGF-1 causing this higher levels of testosterone. And there was a piece of research that was done looking at teenage girls who struggled with acne. And what they found is that those teenage girls who had a glass of milk a day versus those teenage girls who didn't have milk, okay, the teenage girls who had a glass of milk a day had significantly worse acne. Now, you may say to me, Taryn, I love milk. I love dairy. I love cheeses. I just can't see myself giving up on those things. So this is my little challenge, okay? My challenge or my suggestion is that perhaps you can't, eliminating dairy altogether right now seems like a very far off or a really big ask. I want you to consider doing a little experiment, doing a little test with dairy, especially if you're prone to acne or if you struggle with bloating. I really want to encourage you to consider giving up dairy for 30 days. Okay, so you can decide you're going to do it today and you're going to do it, mark it in your calendar when you're going to stop dairy, and just monitor your symptoms. Women who struggle with acne, within 2 weeks, I've had women come to me and say, Tara, my acne is so much better. Women who struggle with bloating after meals, their bloating reduces significantly once they give up dairy. And there are so many amazing options as kind of the vegan diet gains popularity for so many different reasons. There are so many milk substitutes available on the market, whether it be almond milk, oat milk, rice milk. You know, there are cheeses. There are amazing cheeses. Kite Hill in the US create these delicious, amazing, very often nut-based cheeses. So there is so much possibility. And what I want to encourage you to do is just experiment with them. Try different things and see what you really enjoy. Now, I normally have almond milk. So I'll have almond milk in my coffee. wherever I normally have milk, I would just substitute with almond milk. And just recently, I came across a coconut and rice milk, which I can get locally, and it is delicious. It is absolutely the milk that I'm going to be going to in future. So that's your task, is to do this little experiment with dairy. That's the first kind of pillar when I think about a PCOS diet. The next thing that we're going to talk about is gluten. Now, I need to tell you, and I said to you in the beginning of this video, that I would only tell you the things that have scientific research behind them. Now, this is one of the areas that there is not a huge amount of research, kind of medical, really sound scientific research around gluten and PCOS. But, this is the but. In working with women over the last 8 years, I have seen that so many women with PCOS have this sensitivity to gluten. And the problem with a gluten sensitivity is that it causes inflammation in our bodies. Now, women with PCOS are prone to inflammation anyway. If you and I were to have a blood test today, we would find that our inflammatory markers are raised more than a woman without PCOS. Okay, that is part and parcel of the syndrome that is PCOS. And the problem with inflammation is that inflammation leads to insulin resistance. So the more inflamed you are, the more insulin resistant you are likely to be. Now remember that if you're insulin resistant, you need more insulin to cope with the glucose in your bloodstream, which means you're going to have more testosterone being produced from the ovaries. So this link between inflammation and our symptoms of PCOS is an important one to look at. And gluten is known to be an inflammatory food. Okay, so I really do encourage women with PCOS to seriously consider either eliminating or radically reducing the amount of gluten that they are consuming. And again, this doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be that you wake up tomorrow and you're not going to touch gluten again, because that's not realistic. Okay, it's not a realistic thing, and you are going to set yourself up for failure if you do that. But what I do want you to do is I want you to sit down and have a look at what your next meal is going to be. Perhaps you had planned a pasta meal, perhaps you had planned pizza for supper, perhaps it's morning and you're going to have cereal, okay? Just think about what is on your plate and how can you reduce the amount of gluten that is on your plate. Perhaps lunch is normally sandwiches. Well, how about taking a salad to work, or leftovers from last night, or a soup? There are so many incredible options that are that do not contain gluten and that will be significantly more nutritious for you and help you get a better control of your PCOS and of your symptoms. So we've spoken about dairy, we've spoken about gluten. The third one that we need to think about is processed foods. Now, the problem with processed foods is that there has been some kind of process or mechanical breakdown that has been applied to these foods, which means that our body doesn't need to work as hard to digest the food, okay? Which means that they will be more quickly absorbed into your bloodstream. Now, the problem with this, if you was, let's say you took an apple versus a glass of apple juice. So the apple has a lot of really good fiber. Your body needs to mechanically break it down, starting with the chewing, and then when you swallow, it's going to go all the way down into your stomach. There's going to be a lot of chemical reactions and chemical digestion of the food there. So there is a lot that is going to happen to that apple, and that is going to slow the release of the fructose from that apple into your bloodstream. If you were to take a glass of apple juice and you drink that, the juice, so much of that fiber has been removed, so you've got a lot more fructose, for example, and there is not that much that needs to happen to that fructose in order for your body to be able to use it, which means that your insulin levels are going to go like this very quickly. They're going to start rising very quickly in response to the glucose in the bloodstream compared to an apple. So it's really important that you focus on unprocessed whole foods. Now, the other thing that I want you to see is that it is more, especially if your goal with PCOS is losing weight. Very often we purely focus on the calories in our meal, okay? So if you were to do some of the major weight loss programs like Slimming World or Weight Watchers, very often the goal is to stay under a certain amount of calories per day. And that is true too with PCOS to a certain extent. If you're wanting to lose weight, it's not going to be helpful for you to have 3,000 calories in a day, okay? Obviously, we need to look at controlling our calories to a certain degree. But what I want you to see is the hormonal impact of the food that you eat. So let's say we take two meals and we just compare them. So the first meal is going to be a pasta meal, say like a carbonara. And you have that, let's say there are 500 calories in this carbonara. But because there is a lot of carbohydrates, because there is a lot of cream in this, what is going to happen is that your body is going to quickly absorb the carbohydrate. The cream is dairy, so you're going to raise the levels of IGF-1. You're going to have this massive spike in your insulin and your IGF-1 levels. And so you're going to get this massive response, okay, from your ovaries, from your pancreas. It's not going to be helpful for your PCOS symptoms. If, however, you had a steak meal, so you've got a lot of really good lean protein, you have it with a salad, and heck, let's throw in a small portion of fries as well. So I'm not against carbohydrates. We're going to throw in some fries. But because there is a better breakdown between protein, fats, and carbohydrates, you've got a lot of high fibrous vegetables in your salad, that is going to have a much better breakdown, and it's going to be much better for your PCOS. So because of the composition of your meal, you're going to get the slow, steady rise in your insulin. That means that you're going to feel fuller for longer. You're not necessarily going to have the cravings that you could have after a pasta meal, and it's going to be overall better for your PCOS. So I want you to think about what is on your plate as well, not just the calories involved, not just the calories on your plate. I hope that makes some sense. And while we are talking about what is actually on your plate, the next step of this, so we've spoken about understanding what PCOS is and understanding how food has a massive impact on our PCOS. We've spoken about what to eat and what to avoid. The next step is to look at what is actually on your plate. Now, if you have been doing a keto or a low-carb diet for your PCOS, then you may have heard the term macros. Now, when we talk about macros, we're talking about macronutrients. Now, the macronutrients are fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. The micronutrients are things like vitamins and minerals. Okay, the actual smaller nutrients that is found in your food. Now, in light of this whole discussion that we have had about insulin, you may be saying, but Taryn, I really think that a low-carb diet or a keto diet is the way to go for PCOS. And I understand the logic, but I have some reservations about that. And my reservations are that a low-carb diet can be very difficult to stick to, okay? So especially if you're talking about a ketogenic diet. So a ketogenic diet is when you basically train your body to make use of fats for energy as opposed to using carbohydrates or glucose for energy. And a byproduct of using fats for energy are ketones, which is where the term ketogenic or keto diet comes from. Now, in order to be in ketosis, in order to train your body to only use fats, you need to have about 20 grams of carbohydrates or less per day, okay, which is really not very many. So say having a couple of tomatoes, a carrot, and an avocado could well push you over your 20 grams carbohydrate per day. So it is very difficult to stick to. Let's say you go out for a meal, finding ketogenic foods when you're out for a meal, again, can be very difficult. And remember what I said in the beginning, PCOS is here to stay. We have it for life, and we need to learn to manage it over the longer term. So what I would say is that it's really important to think about the food that is actually on your plate and what that kind of looks like. Now, what I normally recommend is that half of your plate is filled with non-starchy vegetables. So loads of salads, loads of greens, those are all really healthy for you. They are high in fiber. They're going to help you feel fuller for longer. They're going to do wonders for your gut health. Women with PCOS tend to have kind of a less diverse microbiome than women with hang on, let me rephrase that. Women with PCOS have a much less diverse microbiome than women without PCOS. So whatever we can do to support our gut is really important. And making sure that you have a lot of these non-starchy vegetables on your plate is very important. Then you need to make sure that you have a portion of lean protein. Okay, protein is very important. And there is research that shows that women with PCOS do well to have lean protein at every single meal. Now, if you are vegan or you follow a plant-based diet, it can be a little bit more tricky to make sure that you are getting enough lean protein, but it absolutely is possible. And in my PCOS Foodies Toolkit, there is a range of vegan PCOS friendly meals. So it is absolutely possible, but it does need a little bit more thought. Then it's also really important to include some starchy vegetables, things like sweet potatoes, butternuts. Those are all really important, okay? It's really important from a vitamin point of view. It's really important from a health point of view that you do have some carbohydrates. And then fat is also really important. Healthy fats, things like olives, nuts, olive oil. Those are all really important, and you need to have fats in your diet. Fats form the foundation of a lot of our sex hormones. There is fat lining every single nerve cell in the myelin sheath. So fats are important. They're going to help you feel fuller for longer as well. So that is what I recommend that your plate looks like when it comes to PCOS. Okay, so I hope that we've answered macros, kind of what should be on your plate. We've answered what your diet should look like. Now, I do have almost the most important thing, the most important pillar is something that we're going to be talking about next. But before we get onto that, if you have PCOS and you really want to learn how to manage it, now whether your symptoms might be, or whether your goal with PCOS is weight loss, or perhaps how to conceive, getting pregnant with PCOS, maybe you just want to feel like yourself again without the brain fog or the depression or the low libido. I completely understand that. And as I've said before, I've been teaching women with PCOS for the last 8 years. I have it myself and I know what it's like, which is exactly why I've created a wealth of information, of courses, of meal plans, of community. You know, I do group coaching. There is so much that I have created over the last 8 years to support women with PCOS. And I've put this all together in one kind of package called the PCOS Foodies Toolkit. The PCOS Foodies Toolkit is my entire library of courses. From we've got the PCOS weight loss program, I've got the PCOS infertility program, we've got the PCOS master plan, we've got a couple's guide to PCOS where my husband and I sat together and we did this course together, because I know that your husband or your partner is so important in your PCOS journey. So we need to make sure that we are including them in this whole journey. I have a combat cravings kit because research shows that 99% of women with PCOS struggle with cravings, and cravings very often derail us. So I've created this course to help women better understand cravings and what they can do to manage it. And then on top of all of that, I've created PCOS Foodies, and PCOS Foodies is it is the most advanced meal planning platform for women with PCOS. We've spoken so much about macros, about what our diet needs to look like. And you might be like, I don't even know where to find recipes for that. I don't know what to eat. I'm so confused, which is why I've created PCOS Foodies. So PCOS Foodies is an online app where you can meal plan for yourself. It's where I create meal plans as well, and I send meal plans every month. You get a new meal plan every month, and you get access to all the previous meal plans that I have created. And the other part of PCOS Foodies is that we have this really engaged community where I am involved every month. You know, I do online workshops with my PCOS Foodies group. We have little mini challenges and bingo. We have a lot of fun in that community. It's a really supportive community. Basically, PCOS Foodies, the toolkit is everything in my arsenal to help you manage your PCOS. So if you want to check out PCOS Foodies, the toolkit, the PCOS Foodies toolkit, then I really want to encourage you, just go to pcosdietsupport.com/toolkit, and you will see exactly what is involved and what you get access to within the PCOS Foodies toolkit. Now, having said all that, I want to look at the very last pillar, okay? And that is We've spoken so much in this video, we've spoken so much about food, okay? And food is important, but it is crucial that we look beyond food when managing our PCOS, because food is the first line of treatment. We need to change the way that we eat, but it is not the be-all and end-all. It is so important because we are not just our ovaries. We are not just our PCOS. We are women who are mothers, who are we work, you know, we entrepreneurs, we wives, we daughters. There is so much more to us than just our PCOS. And so just focusing on the one element of PCOS is never going to be enough. Okay, we need to look at being healthy in every respect, in every possible aspect of that term. Now this is I'm just going to enlarge this so that you can see it. So you're not going to see me momentarily, but I will come back. Okay, so this comes from Precision Nutrition. This is where I got my nutrition coaching from, my nutrition coaching certification. But when we're talking about health with PCOS, we're talking about 6 elements of health. We're talking about physical health. And I want you to, as we go through this, to think about when was the last time you felt vibrant, energized, thriving, like you were performing and functioning well. That is my goal with the PCOS Foodies Toolkit. That is what I really want for you. When was the last time you experienced emotional health? So experiencing the full range of emotions and expressing them appropriately. One of my clients said to me the other day, she said, Taryn, I just feel these moments of real rage and I don't know how to control them. Or something that we don't talk about is that women with PCOS are, it is so often linked with depression and anxiety. We need to be able to experience not just the depression and the anxiety, but the joy and the elation, the full range of emotions. And PCOS has a real impact on our emotional well-being. What about our environmental health? Knowing your everyday surroundings support your health and well-being. Perhaps budget is an issue. Perhaps you live with your parents and they dictate the food that you eat. Perhaps you need to really get your husband on board with your new way of eating, which exactly the couple's guide to PCOS would be so helpful in helping him get on board with your way of eating. Relationally, being connected, feeling authentic with others, feeling supported and like you belong. So often with PCOS, we don't feel like we belong. We feel isolated. It's not something that we talk about particularly often. You know, women say, or people in my general life will say, well, what do you do? And I say, oh, I work online. And they say, and what do you do online? And I say, well, I run PCOS diet support. And that leads me to this whole conversation about what PCOS is. And then next thing I know, I'm talking about my menstrual cycle and my struggle to conceive. But I am very often the exception, okay, because it is what I do. This is kind of what I do day in and day out. And so I've learned to become more comfortable speaking about PCOS and everything that it means. But very often as women, we don't talk about the fact that we have hair where we don't want it, that we have to wax or shave every time we want to go swimming with our children. We don't talk about the emotional impact of PCOS. We don't talk about the multiple miscarriages that we might be dealing with. And so it is very easy for us to feel isolated and alone. And that is why I so firmly believe in the PCOS Foodies community. That is why that community is so vitally important, because we know what it's like to have PCOS. And I always get emotional. Anyway, I don't mean to get emotional, but I do, because women with PCOS need each other. We need to feel connected, and we need to feel supported, and we need to feel that there is somebody in our corner who has our back with PCOS. And yes, our doctors are important, and yes, our husbands are important, but they don't understand what you go through each and every day with PCOS, not like another woman with PCOS would understand. And that is why this community is so important to me. That is why I spend so much time in the Facebook group, because we just need each other. Okay, right, now that was my my passion rant about women. We need to support each other. Okay, what about being excuse me, what about being alert, focused, competent, thoughtful? So often we feel the effects of brain fog with PCOS. Brain fog is real. The post-lunch slump is real. We need to feel like we are in control, alert, focused, that we are thriving in our careers. And that is why it is so important that we look just beyond food. Like, food is one element of managing PCOS, but there is this massive scope of so much more that we could be doing for our PCOS. And so whether you, having said all of that, okay, having spoken about the food that we should be eating, kind of what should be on our plate, or why it's so important to look beyond food, what, after all of this, is your next step? You might be wondering, and I hope you are wondering, what is your next step? How can you take the information that I've given you in this video and apply it to your own life? Because the risk is that you watch this video and don't do anything with it. And a year from now, you are in the same position that you are now with your PCOS. Or perhaps things have gotten even worse. A year has gone by and you are still struggling to conceive. A year has gone by and you've put on more weight. A year has gone by and your hair growth remains out of control. 10 years have gone by and you are perhaps a type 2 diabetic. You are struggling with high cholesterol, with the impacts of metabolic syndrome. These are very real for women with PCOS. And the thing is that you don't have to completely overhaul your diet. You don't have to go to the gym 7 days a week. But it's just about being mindful and making small, consistent changes. So it's every day, just being mindful, taking a 5-minute action for your PCOS. It doesn't have to be this huge mountain in our minds. Now, if you just subscribe to my channel and you watch my YouTube videos, you are going to get a lot of information on PCOS. But over the last 8 or 9 years of working kind of every single day with women with PCOS, with coaching them, with having thousands of women going through my program, I have a really good idea of some of the pitfalls, some of the things that we might overlook. I've seen a lot of women make a lot of mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes myself. And I really believe that the PCOS Foodies Toolkit can help you get to where you want to go with your PCOS in a much quicker way. So I really do want to encourage you to check out the PCOS Foodies Toolkit. I totally understand if you're not ready for that right now, just keep watching my videos. That what is really important is that you are aware of your PCOS. You are aware that there are things that you can do to better manage your PCOS. You are aware that you can start changing the way that you eat. And also the other thing is that I really hope and I really want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel, to stick around, because just by watching these videos, firstly, you are PCOS is you are getting the latest research, you are getting a lot of really good information, and you are making steps. Okay, so it doesn't, as I said before, it doesn't have to be a massive big deal, but take small steps. Maybe that step is to say, I'm not going to have gluten tomorrow. Or maybe that small step is, I'm not ready to give up cheese, but I will start experimenting with different kinds of milks in my coffee. So that's all for me for now. I will absolutely see you in the next video. And again, if you want to check out the PCOS Foodies Toolkit, I will put a link to it in the description and you can check it out from there. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.